Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chaz Kayato, and today the topic of discussion is going to be review for dissertation chapter 1 through American College of Education, which is course 6541. So we've been giving updates and reviews of each course along the way. So we started off with the concept paper, then we moved to chapter 3, then chapter 2, and now we're finishing up chapter 1. So we're done now with the 4th class in the dissertation process. Well, technically I still have a week left. I'm filming this a week before I finish, but I have completed all of the required assignments. So I'm just going ahead and filming this. So this will probably come out a couple weeks after the course is over. So let me start off by saying, before we even get to the course, it was the same as the other classes that I've taken, where not concept paper, but the other classes, in that you want to try to have as much of the paper done prior to actually taking the class as possible. And we're going to talk about how that's very important, especially in this class, and how that, really you don't want to get behind in this class. So so the idea, the chapter 1 is the introduction to the dissertation. So essentially what you're doing is you're kind of summarizing everything that the person is going to read in later on in the dissertation. So this includes kind of outlining things like, what's the lens that you're going to be looking through the dissertation, your theoretical frameworks. You're going to talk about the process of how you're actually going to conduct the research, and this stuff is in other chapters too. So you're going to say, well, wait, didn't we write about that already? And yes, but remember, this is chapter 1, so you kind of write it in reverse order. So you're going to be talking about things that you've already written, and so the way the first 3 chapters are going to work, this will also be the first 3 chapters. We'll call that the proposal right now, and we'll talk about what that means in a second. But essentially, it's what you're going to be doing. So at this point in the dissertation process, all of those verbs will be for the future. I will be doing this, and that's actually really important, because there was a point where I got turned around with verbs and understanding how I was writing the papers. The first 3 chapters, you're writing about what you will be doing in the future, so everything will be future tense. So just keep that in mind when you're writing. You will have to change that later on once you're done with this class. So we'll talk about that towards the end, though. Okay, so like I said, try to have as much of this paper written before the class even starts as possible. I had like over 95% of the paper written before I had even had the first day of the class, maybe even close to 100%, because what you're going to be writing about prior, so you can start working on that. And as I've mentioned previously about working with an editor, I did start working with an editor, so that was who I was, kind of going back and forth with, and making sure I was writing, just writing well, and making sure I had all the required elements. And so that really helped at the beginning of the class, because I could essentially turn things in from the get-go, where I didn't have to start writing when I got to the class. And that may have even been the difference between even finishing the class or not. And we'll talk more about that later on. So yeah, try to get as much of it done as possible. Now the caveat is there may be changes between the previous, there may be changes between the cohort ahead of you and the cohort that you're in, and especially there's definitely going to be changes between multiple cohorts ahead and your cohort. So don't just take something that's old, something that, oh, this is what they wrote last year for chapter 1. Don't take that, because things could have been altered. And now I'm not saying it's not going to be like, something huge in the sense of like rewriting, but if it's something that has to do with how you're going to conduct your research, it may be kind of interlocked with other areas of your paper, and you may have to make many changes just based on one thing. So yeah, make sure you're looking at the most recent checklist. Make sure you're looking at your qualitative or your quantitative, depending on which paper you're writing, because they will be different. So it's very important to make sure that you're looking at the most recent information, and that might not be posted until maybe a few days even ahead of when the course opens. Because there actually was a change that happened between the cohort ahead of me and my class with the checklist. Okay, I went back and looked at both checklists, and it seemed like a very, very minor change. I'm talking about literally 2 added sentences that didn't affect any of the actual writing of the paper. Just 2 sentences at the end of the checklist. But I was told I could not turn in that old checklist because of those 2 sentences. I had to have the new checklist. And so that was something minor. I just went ahead and downloaded the newest checklist and sent it back. But as we've talked about in the past, whenever you are submitting, even if your teacher of record or your dissertation chair, even if it's something small, if they tell you to go back and change something, you're essentially, that was your spot in the queue, and then you turn it in, and then you might be, all the way back at the back of the line. And if it's a busy part of the term, it might be all 5 days before you get that response back. So you want to try to avoid any of those little small changes that have to be remade, and then you're just kind of stuck in one spot where you didn't really have to change much the first time, and then you're just waiting around. So we want to try to avoid that. So have as much of your paper done prior, and get that thing turned in the very first day. So that's pretty much what I did. I'm pretty sure very first day, I made sure you got your mandatory verification form that you got to do. I think there was an ethical acknowledgement quiz. You have to turn in your previous chapters, because those are going to be important, because at the end of this course, when you get to DRR and IRB, you have to have all of those together. So your TOR is going to want to see the second and third chapters, because if there's changes that need to be made, they need to know before you go to IRB, before you go to DRR. Now you might say, well, those chapters are already approved. Why would I need to go back and change something? And you're right, except if something material needs to change. I don't expect chapter 2, since that's the literature review. Chapter 2 probably is not going to have anything that needs changes, unless there was just segments that I don't even know. Chapter 2 is probably going to be okay. Don't quote me on that, but it's probably going to be okay. It would be chapter 3. And so what might happen is, when you wrote chapter 3 6 months ago, things maybe changed, especially for those people that were looking to get temporary permission, site permission. Maybe things have changed with their sites. Well, if things change with your sites, then guess what? You have to go back to chapter 3 and make changes in addition to chapter 1, because chapter 1 just kind of previews chapter 3. So you may have to go back and make changes. So you need to put all that stuff in as early as possible, day 1. And so I did all that. Okay, so very first couple days too, you're obviously starting off with module 1. I like to watch all the videos up front. There's not many. I think there's just 3 short videos. Get all of that information out. Also, I think this is really important too. Go and look through the modules. Now, what I like to do is I either like to have a printed sheet that someone else has made that tells me when everything's due each week, or I write it down myself, which is actually something I just did for the chapter 4. I like to know which week everything is due. Now remember, it's not really weeks. It's actually it's modules, because sometimes one module can take a couple days. Sometimes it can take a few weeks, depending on the process of, the iterative process and whatnot. So it still gives me an idea. Okay, if I'm following everything, if it was a week, this is where things would fall. But remember, it doesn't always work like that. I want to say I was on to module 3 or 4 within like the first week and a half maybe. That's just the nature of being ready to go from the get-go. Okay, so module 1 and 2, you're going to be writing chapter 1. You're also going to be writing the abstract, which will go at the beginning of your paper. The abstract will not be complete at this time. It's just going to, because you haven't done the research yet, eventually we will go back and we'll redo, not redo, but add to the abstract. So, so modules 1 and 2, you're working with your tour on getting that chapter written, making sure you have all the required elements, and then you're going to go to your dissertation chair and committee member in 3 to get their approval. At this time, you're going to compile the proposal. So the proposal is chapters 1, 2, and 3 all combined. Okay, so you have to have chapters 2 and 3 approved as well. At this point, okay, so by the tour, right? Your DC and your committee member. I mean, they've already looked at that, but you need to get it through the lens of the tour as well, because all of those things need to be approved essentially by both parties before they go off to IRB or DRR. So okay, so some other things we need to make sure the appendices are all correct and in the right order. Everything is good there. And we'll talk also about some of the things that I had to change with the appendices that I didn't think about. First, making sure, okay, here's something. You have 3 chapters now that have different, not different, but you have, I guess different references for each chapter. And so now you need to put them all together. Okay, so also make sure during my process of my iterative process throughout these chapters, I also realized I had like 1 or 2 older references that I didn't even have cited in the paper anymore, so I needed to take those out. I personally went back and did each and every single one to make sure it was good. I recommend doing that. And then your table of contents. Okay, so table of contents it's not that difficult. I think I watched some videos. There are some videos on ACE's website. I think I went and found one on YouTube. I think I found a better one on YouTube. It took me about 15 minutes to do, so it's not crazy. Now, the one thing I didn't like is that when you get to at the end, the table of contents for the appendices, if you update page only, like let's say you made some changes and your pages are going to be slightly different. If you just said update your pages, it'll be fine. But if you update the entire table of contents, unfortunately, it changes kind of how the appendices look. So I have to like manually go back and do that, which is another like 5-10 minutes or so. It's annoying. Maybe there's a better way to do it, and I just haven't found it yet. But just kind of understand, the table of contents can kind of seem daunting. It's not that bad. But you do have to make sure it follows the right APA guidelines and all that stuff. Obviously, everything is going to be APA. So you have to have all that. I also went ahead and I put in pages for like the acknowledgments and other stuff that we're not going to do till later. I don't know exactly what chapter that's going to be, but they're going to come They're going to come later. Okay, so once you guys go through the iterative process with your DC, your tour, and you have the proposal, which is 1, 2, and 3, all written, future tense, then you're going to module 4 at this point. There are, I was in module 4, like on week 2. There was someone in our group that I think she was actually ahead of me. So she was probably there in week 1, maybe. We're in week 9, or maybe even week 10. Is it week 9 or 10 right now? And there's actually some people that are still in module 4. So the iterative process can take a long time. Okay, so that's why it's really important to get this stuff done on the front end as early as possible. Okay, so what you're going to do is you actually have to go. You can't submit when you're going to dissertation research review. I believe that's what DRR stands for. You can't do that through the Canvas. You have to go into My ACE. And then on the left-hand side, there's going to be a place for you to submit for DRR. Okay, and so let's talk about that process. So what does this even mean? Okay, so once we have the proposal, DRR, which is other, it's not your DC, it's not your tour, it's other people at ACE who are going to review your proposal and make sure that, it's a review. It is not the actual approval for you to conduct research. And so this is what we're doing right now. We're trying to get approval to do our research. So DRR will be other people, someone else maybe, it might just be one person, who's going to look at the proposal and they're going to say, okay, this can go to get approval from the Institutional Review Board. I'm almost positive that's what that stands for, the IRB. Okay, so they're going to read through everything, all right? So what you're going to do is you're going to answer questions. So you've gone to I want to an ACE, and it's going to say apply for DRR IRB approval. In there, you're going to answer some questions, and there's going to be some dialog boxes for you to answer. Okay, so once you've answered that, then it's going to be sent off to DRR. Okay, so here's where things can get a little tricky. And this is something I don't fully understand. Some of it I didn't really like, but maybe it's just the fact that if you did it earlier, things happened. I don't know. So I know for a fact there were some people in week 2 and 3, they submitted to DRR. They got a response back in like a few days. And then it went to IRB and they got a response back in a few days. And that they were done. Like there were people that had approval in like week 4, maybe even earlier than that. I was not that lucky. But it's kind of frustrating. I mean, great for them. That's awesome. Like they've got to feel amazing about that. But it is frustrating to say like, okay, well, you got through in one day. I'm still here on day 5 and I don't know what's going on. So you will hear that, oh, DRR and IRB, they've gone to a 5-day process instead of a 10-day process. Look, I don't know how the 10-day process worked. That sounds, I don't even fully understand. But this is how, when you submit your proposal, essentially understand this. Because I had both DRR and IRB changes to make. So I got to see both of them and the turnaround for them. So I just compare that to, well, someone got through DRR and IRB within 1 week, and it actually took me about 6 weeks. 6 weeks to get through DRR and IRB with essentially one set of changes, but for both. Okay, so here's how it works. Whenever you turn in your proposal, whenever it's ready to go to DRR as well as IRB, your dissertation chair has to review it first. Now this might take them I think they have 2 days, but I think it'll probably take them at least a day. And then once that happens, then it goes to DRR, then it goes to IRB, okay? Then it has to be assigned, all right? So it's not immediately assigned. So just like someone has to be assigned your paper to read for DRR, and then I guess the committee for IRB. So it's not like an immediate process. So some people think that, oh, I submitted to DRR, I have 5 days. No, first thing, it might take you 1 or 2 days before IRB. I'm sorry, 1 or 2 days before your dissertation chair says this is good. Let's let someone else look at it. And then remember, you're not counting weekends, and you're not counting holidays. It's just business days. So, so then after, I think they have 2 days. Don't quote me on that. I think they have 2 days to have the paper assigned. So it may be assigned. I don't know. Maybe it could be assigned the same day. I didn't see any of that, but it might take 2 days to get assigned. Okay. Then the DRR and the IRB have 5 business days to respond back to your proposal. Okay. So then you'll get the response after, or, like I said, some people saw it happen within just 1 day, like they got assigned, and it will tell you in the portal when the 5th day is. So you will know when the last day is that they have to respond to you. Okay. And if for some reason you don't see it by then, you need to go ahead and you need to contact someone and say, hey, I need this looked at, or I need to figure out what's going on. Why is it not turned in on time? Or responded, why is it not given back to me on time? So, so then after that 5 days, you're going to get the feedback. Okay. Now, I'm assuming that you're not sitting there at your desk right when that email comes across and you can get it all done. I'm assuming it takes at least probably a day, maybe even 2 or 3 days to address all of the things that the DRR and IRB have asked of you. Okay. So there you go. There's a few days right there. Then you have to submit it to your DC has to approve it to go to the second round again. And then you have to, I don't know if you have to wait to get assigned the second time, but you might still have to wait to get assigned. But then you have another 5 days. So now the good news is once you do get approved from DRR, you pretty much just go straight to IRB, and it's the same thing. You have to answer some questions. These questions are a little bit more in depth, and you may kind of even be thrown off by them. Just answer them to the best of your ability, and then same process. Okay, so I had 1 round of changes for DRR. I guess technically 2, although I recognized that the mistake, I was aware of mistakes I had made when I turned in my first round. So I just asked my dissertation chair to just cancel that one for me, and so I could restart. So I technically had 3 total rounds of DRR, but for all intents and purposes, it was just 2, although that did waste a day or 2 when I had to wait for the dissertation chair to X off my second one. And then I went to IRB, same thing. I put it in. The 5th day, I got a response, and there was a lot. There was a lot that was being asked of me. I thought that I was pretty thorough in some of the things. There were some small things, like going back to the appendices. Okay, so I had small things in the appendices that needed to be changed. It was literally just a matter of changing a couple numbers, which, to be fair, I don't even think really changed anything to do with the paper. There were some clarity things that I had to do to let IRB understand what was going on. But I did have a round of review. I had a review round for them as well. So 6 weeks. I want to say in week 2 or 3, it must have been week 2. I started with, so maybe more than 6 weeks. I started with DRR, and I just got finished a few days ago. And I'm in almost done with week 9 right now. I think it's just 1 week left. So, and I was lucky, I think, because imagine if I didn't answer all the questions satisfactory. after the first or second round of DRR, after the second round of IRB. You could be in that process for a very, very long time. Okay, and then when you do finally get your IRB approval, you just need to meet with your DC real quick, and then you can start gathering your data. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have you're not gonna be able to write your whole paper, or I'm sorry, your whole chapter prior to getting into class, unless I know there's some people that have done quantitative that are just using numbers. They don't have to actually do the research from like live subjects or whatnot. They don't have to wait on that information. They already have it. And I know in that case you could be done with your paper, your chapter 4 before the class. But I'm anticipating being writing my paper well into the course, because I have to actually conduct the research. So I don't have all that information yet, so I can't start early. I'm in a position where I'm about to be into Christmas break, and I'm surveying, or I'm talking to teachers to get the data, or I'm getting the data from high school teachers. I'm not going to be able to get that data over the break. I know that there are some teachers, because obviously I'm a teacher. There are some teachers that will shut their laptops the last day of school before they go to Christmas break, and they're not going to open that thing up again until maybe the Sunday before school starts. So me trying to get in touch with teachers over that time. So even though I have an extra week compared to other terms because of the holiday, it actually doesn't benefit me any, because I'm not really going to be able to conduct a whole lot of research during this break anyway. So I'm going to try to get some done prior, since I have IRB approval, but I expect that I'll be doing this well into January. Hopefully be done with in January, because I know from reading the next cohorts GroupMe, there are people that were still in week 7 and week 8 trying to get their data. I don't know how that's going to work, and if you can even wait that long and still finish the chapter on time. I guess we'll find out next term. So I think that was, the last thing. So if you do get to IRB by the time the course ends, if you don't have IRB approval, it's okay. The school actually gives you all the way till the Friday of the next term to get through that IRB process. Okay, so you have to already be at IRB. You can't still be in module 4 or whatever. But if you're in the process of going through IRB approval and week 10's over, they will actually let you continue to do IRB all the way through that first week. And if you do, then they will move you to the next course. If you don't, they have something called like a workspace, where you're working with the IRB until you get approval. I'm assuming that means that you can't actually do chapter 4 during that time. I guess you can conduct your research if you get IRB approval, but you're not working with a tutor on getting everything through. So that would probably be, you just got to try to get to the IRB before then. And in that case, if I were for some reason if I was still in IRB, going back with IRB right now, and it got to the end of next week, I'd actually technically still have a few more weeks to get approval before I would have to sit out the next chapter. But I was lucky. It still took 6 weeks, but I got through with IRB. So that's chapter 1. I'm sure there's something I missed in there, because there's a lot that goes on throughout the week. But the next step is going to be conducting the research, and it's going to be different for quantitative and qualitative. Like, that's going to be different. It's also going to be different, what are you going to do for your, are you going to do questionnaires? Are you doing interviews? Are you doing focus groups? Like, that is all going to affect how long it takes you to get through your next step, which is the research. So I'm happy that I'm in chapter 4. there's a lot of question marks about getting this research done on time. We'll just have to find out when we get there. Hopefully I can get it all done in one term. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But thank you for watching this whole video. I know it's much longer than most of the other ones, but I wanted to give you a very thorough overview of what you can expect. All right, well, have a Merry Christmas. See you guys next year.